we started learning about JavaScript, and today I want us to look at the variables that we can use in JavaScript. Now, moving on, there are various types of data variables or primitives that one can use in JavaScript. So these variables are fundamental in any other programming language. You will always have variables being used. Now, variables are memory locations set aside to store values, and when writing programs, these values are very important to us, so we need to keep track of them and even have a name for them. Now, in JavaScript, there are three major primitives data types, and one of them is numbers. As you can see, we have numbers. The other one is strings. So with the numbers, you store things like 1, 2, 3, the numerals numbers, or the numbers that you have. Then we also have strings, like text. When you want to store text within a variable, or you're working with data which are string in nature or text in nature, you'll have to declare a variable for them. And now for this, in this case, they will be strings type or primitives. Then we also have boolean, which stores only two values, true or false. There is also two other trivial data types which are null and undefined, but also we have another one known as object. Okay, so it is also important to know in JavaScript there is no clear distinction between integer values and floating point values. So it is imperative that you know that at this moment as we move on. Then let's look at JavaScript variables. Now, when declaring JavaScript variables, you declare them with the keyword var. So we have var, the name, var money, as you can be able to see them here. So let's have a look at how we can make use of them in our program. So if we go back to our JavaScript file here, so I've been able to define JavaScript, and for me, I'm placing the JavaScript within the header section for this demonstration. So don't worry. So to declare a variable in JavaScript, you use the var or var keyword. So let's say money. Then you can also have another variable there, name. Okay, so that's how you can declare variables. But also there is a way you can declare variable if you choose to declare variables using one key var, or in one line you simply do var money comma, then you write name, and then you close with that. So those are two different ways of declaring variables in JavaScript. So JavaScript allows you to declare variables using the keyword var, and there are two ways you can be able to declare your variables. Now these variables, you can be able to initialize the variables. You can be able to initialize your variable as this. Let's say var let's say pay amount. That is one variable I have. Then I also have another variable, employee. So those are the two variables I have for now. I can choose to initialize them like this. I can choose to initialize this amount here to be, I can initialize it as such and say as such, right? So being able to initialize it like that. So and also I can be able to say employee so those are two ways I can be able to initialize variables. So storing a value in a variable is what we call initializing. So I've been able to store this 3,000 into pay amount variable, and I've also been able to store the name Alex into a variable known as employee. So that's how you can be able to initialize variables in JavaScript. So when you are initializing variables in JavaScript, what you are technically doing, you are storing data inside that variable. Okay, so moving on, we have what we call the scope of variable. Right now, each variable you declare in JavaScript has got what we call a scope. Now, scope here is how this variable can be used. Now, if you declare variables within a script like what I've been able to do, you can either be able to declare them as local variable or local variables or as global variables. Now, global variables are variables that you can use in functions, in any other function within your script. That is a global variable, and a global variable is normally declared outside a function. So whenever you are declaring a variable and you are initializing it, and you know that this variable you'll use it in countless number of functions, therefore you are supposed to declare that variable as a global variable. So technically you'll place it somewhere where you can be able to use it in any other function that you're going to define. Now, when declaring a local variable, we declare it inside a function. Now, a local variable can only be used within a function, and these local variables are always placed within or they are always declared within a function. So if you declare a function today, and within that function you create a variable in it, then that variable will be called a local variable. So technically, the scope of the variable determine how far and in which way you can use a variable. So scope of the variable is the region of your program in which a variable is defined. We normally have two scopes. Now there is global variable. Now global variable scope, which means it can be defined anywhere in JavaScript code, and it can be used in any function that you're going to declare. Then local variables are variables that are visible within the function they have been defined. So that is why I was telling you a local variable is a variable that has been declared inside a function. That is a local variable. So it works this way. Let me use an example here. Let me show you with an example. With this example I have, so I have two variables here, right? I have two variables here. One is one variable is called pay amount. The other one is called employee, right? So for instance, if I define a function, so when creating a function in JavaScript, it must start with the keyword function, and it must have a name. So let me call it check variable check var scope. All right, that's the name of my function. Now within this function, right? Let me copy this from there and put it right within here, so I'll end up with something like this. Okay, so I've been able to. Now I have a variable called employee. Now, as you can see, these two variables, they've been declared in two different sections. Pay amount is a global variable. Even if I create another function here, I can still make use of this variable here. But this variable called employee, I can only use it within this function that I've been able to create this variable in. That is what it should be able to do for me. But that is how you can have local and global variable. So having stated that, we also need to look at some of the keywords that you must use. You must know, and you must not use them as the name of your variable. Now, these are some of the reserved words that one should not use as the name of the variable anytime you're working with JavaScript. So one of them, or the first in the list, is abstract. We have boolean, byte, case, catch, car, class, const, continue, debugger, debugger, default, delete, do, double, else, enum, export, extends, false, final, finally, float, for, function, go to, if, implements, import, in, instant of, int, interface, long, native, new, null, package, private, protected, public, return, short, static, super, switch, synchronize, these, throw, throws, transient, true, try, type of, var, void, volatile, while, and with. So those are some of the that you may not use, or words that you should not use as the name of, or as an identifier of either a variable or a function. So it is critical we understand this. So I think that is very important to take note of. So that is it. So next time we'll start from here. We'll look at what are some of the JavaScript operators. So we'll come to this next time. Thank you. So